mighty phantoms of the evening sky. To whom do these celestial steeds belong, when you appear to us like gods on high? What brings you here to mystify?
Hi, thank you for tuning in to the Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. I'm Kate Valentine, and today I have the honor of welcoming back as our guest George Filer. There is not a ufologist worth his or her salt that is not familiar with Filer's files. For years, George, a retired Air Force major, has spent a great deal of time and effort to become an indispensable collector of all reports of not only sightings, but also of recent developments in science that may be relevant to uncovering what these tantalizing flying objects are. George Filer is also the Northeast Regional Director of the Mutual UFO Network, and he has lectured at many conferences, including this past MUFON conference. So, welcome to the show, George. Thank you so much for taking this time to be here. I mentioned that you were just giving a lecture at that past MUFON conference. How did the conference go? Was that successful?
It was a great conference, yes. We're in northern Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati, and in any case at the Northern Kentucky Conference Center, but it was several hundred people there and a lot of great speakers, Stan Friedman
and you.
And me. And others as well, of course, Donald Schmidt and Tom Reed and so on.
Yeah.
But all had a lot of interesting things to say, and several had close-up experiences with aliens, you know, being abducted or contacted by aliens. So that was kind of interesting.
Now, they're really quite certain that and this got me in your last Filer's Files. You said that these people, these conference speakers and other MUFON people, realize the world is being visited on a daily basis, and space aliens are actually trying to help the human race.
Well, some of the people from Lockheed who don't want their names mentioned claim that they've been working with aliens for some time. I don't know if they would ever confirm that, but that's what we're hearing in the conferences and so on. That particularly blonde, blue-eyed, light-skinned aliens, they're called Nordics usually, and they're very similar to, you know, Swedish and Norwegian-looking people. And that apparently they're helping us, and actually apparently have helped us for thousands of years. And it's kind of interesting in that the Chinese have just recently reported that they have some 200 pyramids in China and Tibet, which they feel were built by the Nordics. And they estimate the age of the pyramids as 12,000 years old. And it's kind of interesting that the pyramids have like pipes coming out of them that go deep underground. And some of the pyramids are, you know, they've gone into, and they can see these pipes are about an inch in diameter, made partly of metal and partly other substances. And they seem to carry water away from the pyramids, but they also may collect electromagnetic energy and electricity and bring that up into the tops of the pyramids, which we think would be an ideal situation for refueling their UFOs, particularly the disc-type craft.
Well, the thing that really sort of caught my attention was that you report that there was a pyramid-shaped structure being built on Area 51. So this is not ancient. This is a recent building.
Right. Well, Google, you know, has satellites up. But I don't know if the Google itself has satellites up, but they're showing Area 51 as well as the Chinese pyramids, and there's similar pyramids at both Area 51 and in China. So the speculation is that whatever the aliens came up with 12,000 years ago, that we're trying to copy it and build it in Area 51. Now, it's possible that the pyramid is a type of radar, but of course we can't, the Air Force doesn't reveal what their use of this pyramid-like structure is. But they both have a flat top where a UFO could easily land on.
Well, the picture you have in the files shows a flat top on that pyramid, and perhaps they're getting ready to welcome some of our friends from outer space. I don't know.
It's all speculation, of course,
yeah.
But
I'll tell you why they would build a pyramid in. Because Area 51, even though it's a secret base, everybody knows it's there. And obviously, if they build a pyramid and you have satellites going overhead, it's going to be discovered. It's not like it's a small thing underground. It almost looks like there's a stairway going up to the top, too. But, as you said, it's all speculation.
Well, you can't hide much with satellites these days. I mean, any pyramid structure or anything of any size is going to be picked up on satellites. So if they were going to use it for, technological advances or copying what the aliens did in the past, it's pretty tough to hide.
Well, the other thing, talking about tough to hide, you reported on 3 sunken pyramids or Florida. I mean, what is with all these pyramids all of a sudden? We're just hearing so much about them. And it's fascinating stuff.
I like to go back a little in that our scientists, archaeologists and so on, claim that 10,000 years ago, man was pretty primitive, and the advance that mankind had was his stone spears made out of, kind of a flint-type object, and maybe a few arrows, that kind of thing, or something to scrape the bones of the animals that they killed. In other words, man was quite primitive, and we're finding all these pyramids that they're estimating, be 10,000 years old or whatever. And so it would indicate that either man was much more advanced than we thought, or that someone was visiting Earth. And if you stand next to these structures or go in them, like the Giza pyramids, it's amazing how technologically advanced they are. As a matter of fact, it's speculated that they are actually power stations, that they're very sophisticated objects. And if you take your credit card out and you have a block the size of your room, so to speak, and right next to it is another block, you can't fit the credit card in between the 2 pieces of stone, which shows that it's a very technologically advanced type structure. And apparently off the coast of Florida, they're all under the water. They're also finding a series of pyramids. I haven't been able to visit those pyramids, but there's, along the coasts all over the world, there's indications that there are ancient cities that were, when the ice melted, the level of the ocean went up and buried the cities. Matter of fact, there's some talk that it may happen even,
yes.
The next 50 years.
Yes. Actually, yeah, with all the glaciers melting as well. And, it's not just the technology into building them, but it's supposedly back then we were pretty isolated from each other. There'd be pockets of civilization here in South America, there in Egypt, perhaps somewhere in China. But for them all to have similar structures, it seems as if there was an exchange of knowledge, which would indicate that they were traveling as well, that there was some knowledge of each other. They were not quite as isolated as we thought.
Also, something that's kind of interesting is that Danish scientists have gone back and they discovered that, again, between the 6,000 and 10,000 years ago, that essentially all the people on Earth were like from Africa, had dark skin, dark eyes, and dark hair. And scientists say, well, way back, let's say 8,000 years ago, light skin and blue eyes and blonde hair started showing up and actually spread all across Europe and Asia. As a matter of fact, in China they found hundreds of mummified people that were blonde or red hair and blue eyes or green eyes. And if the Chinese are correct in that they were actually aliens who came from another planet, they're responsible for a lot of the different races, basically.
Like a lot of genetic engineering, even back then.
Right.
Okay, well...
Now, I will say that scientists feel that it was because of moving north into the area where you needed more sun that your genes changed in some way and created these light-skinned people and so on. But they have, Alaskan Eskimos. I used to fly up in Alaska. They still have dark skin, even though there's very little sunlight up there.
Well, there certainly has, obviously there's a lot of genetic mutations that can arise naturally, but, again, you have to wonder if perhaps some of this wasn't engineered from elsewhere. And we need to take a quick break here, George. Kate Valentine here in 1160. I'm speaking to Major George Filer, Air Force retired, and Northeast Regional Director of Mutual UFO Network. More importantly, he is the filer behind Filer's Files. Speaking of Filer's Files, I think it's about time that we all start helping George a bit to help out with his expenses. It takes him a lot of time, effort, money to put out these files every week. So please try to contribute to his worthy cause. We'll be right back after a short break.
If you missed part of today's program or you'd like to hear it again, be sure to subscribe to the Kate Valentine UFO Show podcast. Go to Kate's website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com, and sign up by entering your email address on the homepage. Every week, the show will be delivered right to you, so you'll never miss another intriguing, thought-provoking interview with the top names in the UFO field. Sign up today for the Kate Valentine UFO Show podcast at AtlanticCoastUFOs.com.
Hi, thanks for tuning back into the Kate Valentine UFO Show, where our guest today is George Filer, the force behind Filer's Files. Just before the break, we were talking about a lot of different things about pyramids, possible genetic engineering from alien races, and in a sense, too, George, government secrecy. And I love this one quote from your files, if I may. You say, editor's note, the reader of these files is years ahead of the public in understanding that the Earth is being visited by extraterrestrials. It now appears that many of them are entering our society. So that's sort of an interesting thing. And, I think there's so much smoke that eventually the fire is going to come out. And speaking of that, there was Gary McKinnon. He was the English lad that hacked into the, I guess, a lot of stuff he shouldn't have been hacking into, a lot of sort of secret files, and discovered a lot of interesting things. Do you remember much about that, George? I'm lucky.
Well, I'm, a field investigator in MUFON. I'm actually the Eastern Regional Director.
Oh, okay. I always say Northeast. I don't know why. I'm sorry, the Southeast. I apologize.
22 states, but it goes all the way from Puerto Rico to Maine. But in any case, I'm in contact with a lot of our field investigators and actually even people in England who have talked to Gary. I unfortunately have not talked to him specifically, but apparently he's holding back a lot of information. But basically what he's saying that is he went into the government's files, Navy and NASA and Air Force and so on. And as a matter of fact, it was kind of crowded because it was full of Chinese people hacking into our systems and
really
and stealing all of our
that's not good.
work and so on. Yeah, he claims that, so they're picking on him kind of, as a hacker, but our stuff is being hacked into and a great deal of information is being sent to the Chinese, and they're making big advances with the in the technological area from the information that they're getting from us. But Mr. McKinnon, who's actually Scottish, said that he found a list of fleet-to-fleet transfers of officers going from, you might say, the ground to the air, and a list of ship names. And he looked up the ship names, and he said they weren't U.S. Navy ships. Apparently they were spaceships. And he felt that they were some kind of spaceship off-planet. Now, Aviation Week published a picture of what they call the Black Star craft, which is kind of a cylinder-type spaceship that would indicate that we actually do have spaceships in space. And according to Mr. McKinnon, who looked at the files, said that we did. I don't have any first-hand knowledge, although it was kind of funny that the Obama administration cut out the shuttle and stopped us having shuttle, but apparently we have other shuttles run by the military in space and more advanced.
Yeah, well, I think it was true. I do think the shuttle did. It was time to improve on it, and he said as much, really, that it was important to start advancing. So I guess that was a hint to the general public that perhaps there is something else out there.
Well, we actually suspected that there was a newer shuttle up there, and it's quite likely that, in fact, there is. And, some of our investigators are down in Alabama, and they confirmed to me that they've been told that we have military shuttles up there.
And also, I think he discovered extra, how was it, non-terrestrial officers?
Right.
Or a whole list of
the officers that were allegedly in space.
So what do you think? I mean, certainly they were above board with the original NASA space flights and landing on the moon and the shuttle flights. Why would they keep this secret? Or why would they not mention it? I mean, it would seem to me it would be a national pride issue.
Well, you can speculate that people who talk about aliens talk about friends. Many of the aliens are friends. Some are neutral, and it's quite likely that some are, you might say, against us, or taking advantage of us, or taking our minerals, or whatever, or conducting the abductions, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So the powers that be, the military tries to protect the United States and, in effect, the world from bad guys, whether they're from this planet or off planet. So there's maybe something going on in that area.
So,
Dr. Farrell, who's written the alien logs, and claims that, in fact, now these are, you might say, fictional books, but they, well, he's a doctor of engineering and apparently knows a great deal, and he shows the cover of his book a cylinder-shaped object on the moon. And that's been, Edgar Mitchell, and many of the astronauts are starting to release information that, in fact, that the Earth is being visited. It's not only me, it's many people. And we have literally hundreds, if not thousands, of abductees who claim that things are going on. Last week, for example, I got a call from a detective on the police force who, interestingly enough, also has a PhD and is in Mensa, and he's all concerned because his 19-year-old daughter, who was never asked to sleep in his parents', her parents' bedroom, is insisting on the fact that she sleep there because she's seeing these orbs in her room every night, and they're frightening her. And he's well intelligent and interested and has all kinds of weapons, being a policeman, but also cameras. And when I went over there, using his digital camera, taking pictures of his dark bedroom, we were picking up orbs in the room. And these orbs are about the size of a baseball or so. But you could kind of see, like technology inside the orb. It almost looked like there was antennas, and kind of reminded me of the motherboard inside of your computer. I don't know if people have seen that.
Did this just start with her, or had this been ongoing since childhood?
This just started. Or at least she's never been frightened before.
Wow.
And
wow.
It looks like it has a couple brass antennas in it. Now they see a face in the orbs. I see, I'd say, technology. You're looking at a picture. It's kind of like looking at the clouds. What do you see? But we do see different things, and many people are reporting these orbs. And MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, had 1,000 sightings. Actually, it was 971 during the month of July. And Peter Davenport, his National Reporting Center, had over 1,000. In other words, we had 2,000 people reporting UFOs in July. And when they report them, it takes roughly a half an hour to fill out the report online. And many of them had photographs of various kinds of objects in the sky, cylinders, discs. Most of them, frankly, were lights. But the propulsion system on the UFOs creates this ionization around in the atmosphere, and it comes out as a light until you get real close to it and see that it's some kind of a craft.
So you think that really is a lot of sightings? So there's been an increase recently?
Yes, large increase in sightings.
Well, it seems like everything's sort of starting to come to a head out there. Like you're hearing more about it in the news. It just seems like it's becoming a real common topic of conversation too. People don't roll their eyes when you mention UFOs the way they used to.
Yes, well, it's come out, in scientific circles. There's several hundred planets that they've found, some that are roughly equivalent to Earth, that could have a civilization. Then if you start thinking about it, well, if there's planets with possible, life out there, maybe they're coming visiting here, particularly if they're, a million years ahead of us or 10,000 years ahead of us, and then we have landings on Mars of our own UFOs, so to speak.
Right.
And some of the astronauts and a bunch of the cosmonauts are talking about it. So, it's in the realm of possibility. And then you have the X-Files and movies and all the rest of it.
Well, I think science fiction has helped out an awful lot with that too. I mean, it just, I think the children today are very accepting of this. As a matter of fact, I think children, if you told them that we were the only life form, would think you were silly.
Yeah, well, I saw UFOs when I was a 5-year-old child, and my whole life I've seen them. And when I was in the Air Force, I chased them, particularly over England. Matter of fact, the fighters would go up and chase them, and they only had, an hour or so fuel on board. Well, when you're chasing something, you have it's kind of like hide and seek, It takes more fuel. And some of the planes didn't come back, so they asked us, actually tankers, if we would chase them because we could fly almost as fast as a fighter, but we had like 15 hours of fuel on board. So consequently, we could just, chase them for a significant period. And one night, London Control called us up and said, would we be willing to, investigate? So we said sure, and we were over the North Sea, and we had a let down over the center of England where Stonehenge and Oxford are located. And it was a large cylinder orbiting at about 1,000 feet high, and we were 30,000 feet, so we went into a dive, and they cleared all the traffic, around London and the area, so that we could get to the craft quickly. And I don't know, it took us about 15 minutes or so. And as we dove, we actually went through the red line of the aircraft and had to pull back on the power. So I could easily see how in the chase, so to speak, that you could have the wings come off or something. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but it's a possibility that it could happen. Well, we turned the radar towards the UFO, and I don't know how familiar you are with Scotland or whatever, but one of the largest bridges in Scotland is the Firth of Forth Bridge, which is about a mile long. I mention this because as you take off out of Sculthorpe, you can pick up that bridge 200 miles away, because it's the steel bridge over like a bay, and it's like roughly equivalent to the Brooklyn Bridge. In any case, we turned the radar on this UFO, and we had almost the same radar return. In other words, of an object possibly as long as a mile long, and off in the distance we could see a cylinder-shaped object, or at least from what we could see was cylinder-shaped. It was kind of like a cruise ship at sea, with all the lights on it. And we got about a mile or so from it. It just went up into space. We were doing 400 miles an hour, and it was doing, 40,000 miles.
So I guess I'm sure that made you a believer. Yeah, I bet. We're going to get right back to that. We have to take a quick break. Kate Valentine, 1160 WVNJ. I was speaking to Major George Filer. He is the filer of Filer's Files, and he will certainly appreciate you appreciating him taking all that time and effort and money to put out these files every week by contributing even a slight donation. We're going to be right back after a short break. Thanks for tuning back into the Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. I've been speaking to Major George Filer, Air Force retired and Eastern Regional Director of the Mutual UFO Network. He also has written, and he is the filer behind Filer's Files. And George, how would they get in touch with you, or how would they subscribe to Filer's Files?
Yes, if they want the free files, they just send me an email at majorstar@verizon.net, like a major star in the sky.
Yeah.
Verizon.net. Also, my website is the nationalufocenter.com. nationalufocenter.com.
How long have you been doing this, George?
Well, Filer's Files has been coming out for 15 years.
Really, huh? Well, after an experience like you had in England, I can, as we said just before the break, that certainly would make you a believer. Now, when you landed, you would have to have been debriefed on that. Is that correct?
Well, it was kind of strange that we put it in the navigator's log and reported it, and no one in the Air Force seemed particularly interested. And there's a certain amount of, scoffing at, did we really see it, and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, nothing really official. Then a couple of weeks later, we were invited to a dining in with Prince Philip.
Wow.
And he actually gave a talk to quite a few officers, kind of a speech, and he asked, might say, for dessert, let's get together with the air crews that have had UFO sightings. I didn't know this at the time, but he knew that we had this encounter through London Control, and he's very interested in UFOs, and he or his aide try to brief or talk to the air crews. So we sat down with him and had dessert, so to speak, and a cigar, and talked very friendly. But and I told him the story I just told you, that I had seen them, personally. And I asked Prince Philip why, he was interested. He said that his uncle, Earl Mountbatten, was very interested and had seen them up close.
Up
when
close?
He was in the Admiral of the Navy.
Huh.
A lot of people don't realize it, but he was equivalent to MacArthur in the Pacific for the UK forces. And there's been a lot of stories that they, in fact, saw UFOs, in the Pacific in the Second World War. As a matter of fact, I had an acquaintance who was flying in China who had seen them, and was told by some Tibetans that they had a base there. A lot of this isn't that secret in a way. Many countries handle this openly. This UK just released a bunch of UFO sighting reports that had been in Wales, through the last 10 years or so on, and particularly South America. Sounds funny, but I've been on TV in South America fairly often. They come up and interview me. And in Japan, they come here. They'll come all the way from Japan to interview me. And I say, well, how come you're coming all the way from Japan to interview me? And they say, well, it's the most watched TV programs in Japan.
Really?
And if you watch the recent, earthquakes and tsunami there, you can see UFOs flying, over the areas.
Really?
That they're frequently on TV. And in China, whenever they launch a satellite or anything, they'll take pictures, and release it, and they'll be on the Chinese television. And there's something like 1 million people in China who are, investigators and interested in this subject. probably is less is known in the United States than in most countries in the world because our news media doesn't choose to cover it.
I think that is the secret, that once a major channel, NBC, CBS, something of that nature, sort of speaking with authority, would come out and say, yeah, there are UFOs, and we're pretty sure they're aliens, and I think then you could almost say it gives people permission to speak about them. It takes that giggle factor away from it.
Yeah, in the 1950s and 60s even, they did that. And what I understand is that people don't remember too well, but they used to have the operators that would run the telephones. And you remember they used to stick in the metal situation so that...
those little plugs that you connect people with?
Right, used to connect. It used to look like a pencil. They connect people.
I wonder I don't think anyone today could work those.
I don't know if people remember that, but some of the old movies you might see it. But in any case, it was a very kind of primitive system, and you needed an operator to even use your telephone.
Right.
Well, when the UFOs were flying around, people were calling the government and the military, and particularly the Air Force, and basically clogging up the communication lines, reporting the UFOs. So they said, we've got to do something to, stop all these reports. It's just like today, a couple thousand a month or whatever. Well, so they kind of made it, if you believed in UFOs, you were kind of stupid or ridiculous or something, And so people kind of stopped reporting, and it's, for example, just 10 years ago, we'd only get 250 reports. Now we're getting 2,000. I'm just saying that people are seeing things, and of course, with the internet, they're able to report them easier, and they're out there.
But but even as you say, to fill out those reports online takes about a half hour. So people are very serious about this when they see something, and then they realize that something is actually flying around out there. Then they get interested and they want to know what it was that they saw. And I think that's why they report a lot of it too.
We figure out only getting, maybe 10% of the reports of what people are really seeing.
Yeah, Peter Davenport always said that if he gets 500, there's probably been 5. So that means that the sky is just filled with these things. And I think one of the reasons they don't get more reports is that people just don't look up that much either.
Well, that's true.
And because if there are that many reports, you have to be seeing these things all the time, just like commercial airplanes.
And one interesting thing is they often are hanging around airports, and I think they do that because people are, familiar with seeing things in the sky all the time, so they don't get too excited if they see something else in the sky and don't even worry about it. But yet, we get a lot of abductee reports right close to the airport. But it's not generally known by the people.
Well, not a great place to live then. But, I mentioned very naively to somebody once, well, these reports that they have like navigational lights, red and green and white. And I said, so that probably is commercial because they wouldn't be familiar enough with our culture to realize that would then disguise them as commercial craft. And the person I was speaking to is a very good investigator, said, well, of course they're familiar with our culture, and it doesn't take much effort on their part to put out the appropriate navigational lights and therefore just disguise themselves as commercial flights. So that might be part of it as well.
Well, most of the time we get, the orbs are usually orange that are the people see in their houses, although sometimes they're out in the sky, we get a lot of reports of red lights and maneuvering craft, that kind of thing.
Well, I'll tell
and if you think about it,
I was just going to say, we're going to take another quick break, George. This will be our last break, but I'd love to get back to this whole question of orbs as soon as we get back. This is Kate Valentine. We're on 1160 WVNJ, and our guest today is Major George Filer. He is the filer of Filer's Files, and we'll be right back after a short break. Hi, thanks for tuning back into the Kate Valentine UFO Show at 1160 WVNJ. I'm speaking to Major George Filer. He is the Eastern Regional Director of the Mutual UFO Network, and he is the filer behind Filer's Files. George, would you mind please telling him again how they can subscribe to Filer's Files?
Yes, they just have to send me an email to majorstar at Verizon.net. Major Star is like MAJORSTAR. And they can also go to the National UFO Center, just nationalufocenter.com. It's online. Have my picture there. And the files are there. They can, but if they'd like to receive them in the mail, I'm happy to send it to them free.
Yeah, it's a great research tool, especially if someone's just getting started, and they can, for a slight donation, get all the back files on a DVD or CD, I guess, excuse me. And it's just great stuff, George. You have an encyclopedia of ufology on your Filer's Files. Just before the break, we were talking about orbs a little bit. Now, is this something, I mean, orbs have been around a long time, but are they becoming more frequent now along with the other sightings?
They seem to be.
Yeah, huh?
But at least we're getting more reports along that line. And, well, fairly frequently people are seeing them within their home, and some claim that they're reconnaissance vehicles, and that they come in and look around your home and see what you're doing, etc. And some people claim they even expand into an alien. See, we're dealing with technology that could be like 1 million years ahead of us, so they can do a lot more than we can. It's almost like magic. Now that we have one picture of a snake-like orb that seems to be like 20 orbs, and it's kind of moving around, and the orbs kind of like all dissipate from the snake and are going into other people's homes, that kind of thing.
That's so strange. It really is so strange.
Now, we're not sure what they're doing, and they don't seem to be harming people. Now, you can't, if you see it, obviously you're a little afraid, like if you saw a ghost or something,
Sure.
Something you don't understand. But we're also noticing that within the last 50 years or so, the average brain of the average person on Earth has increased by the size of a tennis ball. And many of our children are quite intelligent and seem to have more intelligence than we do. They certainly have a greater ability to work on computers than most of us do.
Yeah, that's been the subject of a lot of good comedy, too. So you think that there may be another genetic jump here coming along?
I think they're doing something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be harmful.
Right.
And also, you have to think about the fact, from the alien point of view, we are going out into space. And what do humans do mostly? They have these tribal wars and all kinds of crime and things. And if you were in a planet not very far away, would you want humans coming out there with their weapons and everything? That most of what they're telling us is that we've got to take a better care of our planet, that we're destroying our planet, that from an environmental standpoint and even from a morality standpoint, we're behind, so to speak, that we must do more.
Well, so we're sort of unwelcome visitors out there, huh?
Right. Well, no, yes, that we're the unwelcome ones.
Yes, not them. Well, I guess they would be getting nervous because we have landed on Mars now with the rover, and I guess that's sort of the scout for a real human landing on Mars eventually. Actually, they say there already are bases. There's always been that rumor that we've had bases on Mars, but I don't know. I think I don't know. This whole rover thing is pretty. I mean, if nothing else, it's just been a phenomenal feat by NASA to have been able to do this. I wonder if the average person realized just how extraordinarily difficult that was to do.
Well, it was a wonderful ability to go to another planet and land successfully in what looked like a UFO, a disc-shaped object initially before.
Yeah, we were the Martians' UFO. That's interesting.
And there's indications that if there's civilization on Mars, it's probably underground because they get hit by meteorites and so on a regular basis. There's another thing discussing Mars that I don't know if people remember, but in 1976 we had 2 Viking satellites reach Mars and land. They didn't move around as much as they do now, but they were able to conduct various tests. And I talked to the designer of the test, Dr. Levin, who had designed a test to determine if there was life on Mars, called the labeled release experiment. Any case, in 2 different places on Mars, according to the test that we got back, they found microbiotic life living on Mars. And I talked to Dr. Levin, and he confirmed that. He said that for whatever reason, NASA decided basically not to release that data to the public. So we know that there's at least microbial life on Mars. There's indications of pyramids on Mars, tubes, roads, forests, and it goes on and on. That actually, if you go to the National UFO Center.com, you can see many of these pictures taken by NASA, and released to the public that shows structures and things that don't look too different from certainly what Egypt looked like, 2,000 years ago. We're not sure if there's civilization is still, alive on Mars, but it certainly looks like, at least in the past, there was a civilization there. And apparently it was driven underground, and does it still exist? Or did a spaceship called the Ark come here?
So you see, you bring that up too, and so many people think that life first developed on Mars. There was some sort of catastrophe, and Earth actually became a better place to live for life, and it came here, and they point to the Cambrian explosion at that time, which would also tie in with the asteroid belt and going a little bit crazy on Mars, and Mars losing its atmosphere. I would like just once to know what really happened. It would be a really interesting history if we got what actually happened and not what's fed to us through the years.
Well, some people who talk to aliens claim that a lot of these things in fact happen, and of course anyone who claims to have talked to an alien, you kind of wonder, but I talked to a lot of people who claim to have been abducted, did a lot of research with Dr. David Jacobs at Temple and John Mack at Harvard and so on, that we tried to find out what was going on, and at least there's thousands of people who claim to be abducted, and many people who just claim to be contacted and told things. That apparently their method is not to, show up at the White House, although they may have. Their method is to contact, the guy on the street and let this information become real very slowly. Because of it, one thing to think about, if it was announced all at once, with no, you might say, preliminary knowledge, it would be a great shock to the people of this world. And the biggest shock would be to the scientists, because a great deal of what they know would no longer be correct. And it's interesting that Ben Rich, I was talking to Jan Harrison, who was a UCLA engineer who happened to know Ben Rich, and was at his alumni meeting where Ben Rich, who was dying of cancer, started revealing information. Now, Ben Rich was the head of the Skunk Works and helped design the SR-71 and the U-2 and so on. He was essentially probably America's greatest engineer, maybe except for Nikola Tesla. But in any case, he told the audience that we had the ability to take E.T. home.
Really?
That we're 30 years ahead of where people think we are. And this is like in 1993 he's giving this speech. So we're apparently, at least according to Ben Rich, far out, that the UFOs are real, that we have them, we back engineered, theirs, and we're able to go to other planets, according to him.
Well, George, already this hour's come to an end, and I think that's a great note to end it on. It was good that Ben Rich did say that, and you would think that he would have been taken not more seriously, but that it would have been major news for someone like that to have made a statement like that. But again, everything else in this field just gets covered up. Thank goodness for you and Filer's Files. But I think you're unique in compiling these reports and making them available. That's a great thing. And I want to remind our audience that these files require a great deal of time and effort on George Filer's part. And people always ask me, what can they do to further UFO research? Your cause, George, is a great one to support, not only by appreciation, but also some financial donations as well. Right, George?
I don't ever ask for things, but
it's okay. That's I think people should start to realize just how much time and effort you do put into these things. But again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, George. Okay, and thanks as always to Bill and Dave, whose expertise in putting this show together never ceases to amaze me. Thanks always to our sponsors. Mostly, though, thank you for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe to our still free podcast. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next Friday at 1. Until then, this is Kate Valentine reminding you to keep your eye on the sky. Bye.